Hello there, Seraphim17 once again. This is my Mirror's Edge Catalyst. This is the 12th of the mission. 12th of the missions. Great English, Chris. I do apologise, guys. Sometimes my brain farts and all I can do is listen to its flatulent nonsense. This is the 12th mission. It's entitled Viva la Resistance, and we're going to be doing Mirror's Edge things for the duration of this Mirror's Edge game. We're going to be having a lot of fun, a lot of commando rolls, a lot of coils, hopefully, if we get that upgrade. And I do like this part of the game. I think this allows us a little bit more freedom than the earlier stuff, and it gives you the ability to use some of the new tools that you've purchased if you went on the same upgrade path as me, which is for momentum and movement, which is the way you want to play this game. In the last video we were talking about adding some features to the combat, and in ways we think it could make it a little bit differently. Perhaps better, perhaps worse, depending on your opinion of what the game's combat is. Here is the game introducing turrets. They're not a massive mechanic, it's just another thing to shoot at you while you do platforming, which is kind of bizarre considering I assume they want the turrets to be a ticking bomb, to incentivize players to feel peril, to feel tension, to feel like they're being rushed, to make those quick decisions, when in reality, everything in this game shoots at you. So you spend so long getting shot and having your focus chipped away by bullets from ridiculous ranges that it almost completely nullifies the threat of what the weapons are, because you're so used to being shot at. It's not an event or anything special, it's just the way the game is. So they diminish the value of the threat in a lot of ways by just completely oversaturating the world with this notion of Faith literally takes more bullets than Sean Connery in The Untouchables, and that's saying something. So if you've seen that scene, it is squib heaven. Anybody who doesn't like Sean Connery, watch that movie. You'll be impressed with that scene. But then again, how can you not like Sean Connery? The guy's a beast. But we were talking about the combat and in ways in which we think it could be changed. And I say we because I'm involving you in this because you're part of this. The audience does have participation, it's just a little bit later in the video's life cycle is all. So a block feature could be great, and it could implement more complexity to add to things. They could have had an emphasis on combat being perhaps one-on-one rather than always chucking tons of dudes at us, and then it could have been a little bit more detailed and a little bit more about counter-punching and ducking and countering moves appropriately. There was a sequence at the end of Uncharted 4 where you press one button to dodge the left-hand attack, you pressed another button to dodge the right-hand attack. That could have been something implemented in these one-on-one encounters. But what I would have preferred to see personally would have been some kind of parkour combat against another runner. Because to me, when you play such a stylized, specific game like this, the most interesting aspect of it is the stylized, specific part. I'll bring it back to Wonderful 101, a game I absolutely adore. The best fights in that game are against the dude who can do exactly what you can do. And for a brief moment, it shows you a world where Wonderful 101 got a multiplayer where you could fight against humans, and they balanced it a little bit better, made it a bit more rock paper scissors for counter moves and stuff, and that could have been beautiful. But those were the most interesting aspects of that game, and with Mirror's Edge, the running's the most fascinating part. So why don't we ever have these moments where you're up against somebody who's just as agile as you, and it completely flips the combat on its head, where it's less about, you know, spamming the buttons to kick people awkwardly off of ledges, and it's more about your positioning. You know, you could have people running on walls and doing three-point jumps and stuff and all kinds of crazy parkour, coming over coiling, spinning, command rolling and stuff, and all you have to do is time a really well-placed run and jump or dodge, and then do some kind of slide kick and counter them with your own momentum, and just this notion of two forces kind of getting up speed and clashing together. You know, if anybody watched the Flash series, there was the Anti-Flash, wasn't there? The other dude who's just like the Flash, who's mean, and they were just two massive forces coming together. You know, there could have been a lot of ways of doing just different things. It didn't have to be generic enemies charge at you, some of them shoot you, some of them try and fight you, and then the toughest one does this pre-cooked bullshit where he knocks you back and you do a backwards roll for 20 minutes. It's such an interesting choice in the way they went with it. But it also breeds an interesting question, I think. Incentivizing combat over other things. So that was unfortunate there, guys. I managed to run on the wall, sorry, when I didn't want to, so I lost a lot of speed and momentum there, but it's not the end of the world, because we're still going. You know, this is a tricky mission to pathfind on, and the waypoint is going to fail you here, because it's just kind of confused at times. And in its fairness, I don't follow it all the time, because sometimes it vanishes and I can't see where it went. So I just kind of do my best. But incentivizing combat over movement is a very important question when talking about Mirror's Edge Catalyst, because at what point do you make the combat so interesting that people would rather do that than what the draw of the game is? So you spend all your resources and all your money making this game have fantastic responsive combat that's worth playing. Would that make people not want to do the main draw of your game? I'm not sure. I think everything has to come in moderation. I think the greatest aspect games have is when they do something just enough, but not too much, where you don't realise that's what you were doing until they change the gameplay up, and you suddenly go, oh whoa, this is different. I was really enjoying doing that other thing, but now we're doing this thing. And then once you get the grasp on what you're doing, it goes back to the other thing. You're like, oh nice, back to this again, I can do this and practice this and do that. And that's the great bit for me as a gamer, where you get those moments where you don't realise that the gameplay's changing because you're too interested in it and hoping to get back to the other variant, because they're keeping you on your toes. You know, they're not making you groan and go, oh, this shit again. You know, unless you don't like it, and in that case, you can play something else. But I think there's no excuse to not have good combat in a game. If one of the arguments against it is that you wanted to incentivize movement and running, then why the fuck did you lock us in a gauntlet room against dudes? Doesn't make sense, you know, it doesn't back up any kind of intelligent argument with that. There's no Socratic method to be had there. So, I think that is one of those counterpoints that you can put forward, and we're doing this as devil's advocate, guys. I don't think anyone's going to argue that, you know, you should fight in this game, because I don't think there's many people that are going to be that interested in fighting in this game. And I keep saying it, don't I? I really did enjoy Condemned, a game that is quite controversial with my friends. A lot of my friends hated it. I loved it because it had precise combat that was simple but deep enough to be fun. And there was horror elements and there was various other things. But it did something different with first person, and the one thing I always really appreciated is it committed to the perspective. I can't stand these first person games that pull out to third person. Like, if you want to be a third person game, be a third person game. You know, first person, commit to that perspective. Show me those animations, take the time to make it look cool and good. And a lot of games have done it. And when you see that moment where it sticks in that instead of going to a pre-cut cutscene or pulling out, it feels so much better. And don't get me wrong with that last statement. I do like stuff like Deus Ex that pulls out. I liked Rainbow Six, that pulled out when you went into cover when you were from first person to third. I think that's an interesting mechanic to have, and it's an interesting direction to go, but for me, first person perspective is all about immersion and it's all about commitment. If you commit to showing me goofy looking animations that actually look pretty badass when you think about it, all in first person, I'm going to respect you way more than if you just cut away to show some dude climbing shit, because that's not fascinating to me. I want to see how you use the perspective, how you make it work, because that's where that medium really needs to be pushed, because I think we're getting a bit stagnant with first person shooters. And it doesn't help that we've got this fetish for this military shooter that never evolves. And when I say evolve, I mean truly pushing what it means to be first person, not here's a bigger planet to blow up, here's a bigger gun to carry, here's a bigger dick to show your friends on the leaderboards. I mean just the medium as a whole, the art form of the first person game. But thank you very much for watching, and you take care now.